the VFW, kind of.
Dave has said he doesn't know more than 200 people will vote in Ward 3.
I would be surprised if 100 people vote in Ward 1.
35 seconds.
You can't really go in.
Yes, terribly disappointed I didn't get to see you since Freddie Todd died. Yeah. And that we've had meetings with his wife. We did a special program on Sunday. We had a big family thing this weekend for the big lodge up at our house pass. Huge lodge, like. Wow.
Still not up.
All right, thank you, Deb. All right, everyone, I'll call to order this Monday, November 18th meeting of the Sturgis City Council. First item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as it is, or a motion with it includes an amendment?
I'll move to approve.
I would second.
First by Jesse, second by Jim. All those in favor indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. All right. Next item, please join me for reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have quite a few announcements tonight. Our first announcement is as part of our civic pieces that are going on. Our petitions for our special election on January 7th are due Thursday, November 21st by 5 p.m. So that we have a few more days of that going. This coming Friday, November 22nd, is the 30th Annual Festival of Trees down at the First Interstate Bank. This has been a great fundraiser for many things in our community. Admission is $10 a person, and a lot of great Christmas theme items to be purchased by live auction and silent auction and all that. On Thanksgiving Day, so we're proceeding to November 28th, we've got a Thanksgiving Day meal at the community center, brought forward, I believe, by all the local churches. And it's based on a contribution or volunteer on that. There's a number that you can get a hold of through Deb, I think, to. City offices will be closed on Thanksgiving Day and the day after, so I guess that's been part of our heritage and tradition, I guess, for some time, so we're going to keep that going. And another good event in the community is the annual Sturgis tree lighting. That's December 5th, Thursday at 6 p.m. at Harley-Davidson Rally Point. And the final item in the announcements and praise that I have is the Sturgis Parade of Lights. Same week, but December 6th, 6 p.m. And we've actually got action later in the meeting for the parade route, but it's the traditional parade route. So we'll talk more about that when we get to that. So we always have a great parade of lights. And I guess I could share the parade route, but I think I'll wait until we get to that agenda item. Does anybody have any additional announcements or praise? Nothing from the council? How about from the public? All right. We'll go on to item 5. Non-agenda matters that may come before council. So if we have a desire to address the council on something that isn't already on the current agenda, please come forward. I guess we'll start with the council. Does anybody have any non-agenda items they'd like to speak about? How about members of the public? All right. Having no non-agenda items, we'll continue on to item 6. 6.1 is tabled item, and this is consideration to approve Resolution 2451 on voluntary annexation of Dolan Creek Road. This was tabled from September 3rd. Rick, can you address this a little bit? I think.
Certainly, the developer has asked that you deny this action, as they're going to be amending it and resubmitting with a different annexation plan at a later date.
Okay. So with that, we have a couple of actions that we could do. We could make a vote to deny it, or we could just not make a motion to approve it, and it would die for lack of any actions.
I would recommend that we make a motion to deny it as presented, and then that way he can bring it back forward.
Very good. Anybody on council willing to make that motion?
I'll make the motion to deny.
We got a first by Jim to deny,
I'll second.
second by Nick. Those in favor of denying the voluntary annexation request for 2560 Dolan Creek Road indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Okay, we've denied that, and we expect Chris to come back with a new plan at some point down the road. Our second tabled item is a request from Tom's Tees to allocate rally royalty payments for use at the Sturgis Community Center. We had some good discussion on that recently. There was some discussion as well on the direction that those funds were intended to go. I think, Lance, can you kind of help fill in some of the gaps on some of these and maybe what some of the amounts are? Because generally, not just the heritage marks, but the rally event cups that we sell have been previously earmarked for sale or for donation, half to Sturgis Rally Charities and half to Sturgis Rally Endowment.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. Specifically, with respect to the Heritage Mark collection, which Mr. Monahan was referring to in his request, that is to go directly to the endowment fund, Sturgis Rally Charities Endowment Fund. You had also mentioned the open container cups, the official cups. Those this year totaled $39,136 in sales, and that would be evenly split each year between Sturgis Rally Charities and the endowment.
So help clarify for me the portion on the proceeds from the Heritage Mark.
My understanding, again referring to the meeting where City Manager Daniel Ainsley presented that and it was voted on, it's my understanding from that meeting that the entirety of those funds would go to the endowment.
The entirety of those funds go to the
That's
endowment.
my understanding.
Thank you.
I would also like to, if I might, just also recognize our sponsor, Anheuser-Busch, for their partnership in helping us provide those cups in that return to Sturgis Rally Charities and the endowment. We couldn't do it without them.
Well, that was through their sponsorship that we were able to raise the $39,000 that will find its way to other areas of our community. So that's a plus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, council, the decision on the table is how you want to manage the request for the Heritage Mark payments by SAN to go to the to the community center, or if you want to stick with what some of the current direction has been. And Lance, I'm not contradicting, but I thought that the Heritage Mark was actually supposed to go to also to rally charities, but I don't have it right in front of me right now.
I guess, Mayor, my thought is we wouldn't have that mark to raise money without the same family and business that's making this request made the agreement. Whenever that agreement was made, but nonetheless, it's the same family, the same company that's making the request today. And in my mind, the request is it's a valid request. It goes to help the community as a whole, or a big portion of the community. And I will be fully in support of sending it to the rock climbing wall at the community center.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think there's any way we're gonna build a rock climbing wall for $3,500, so it might be a beginning for it, but I still am of the opinion that under the circumstances with the money that's necessary in Sturgis right now, that everything that can come into the general fund to help pay bills needs to do so. We have underwritten the community center, continue to do that, and I think we will continue to do that. They're not going without as it stands, and though it might be a nice feeling for someone, citizens of Sturgis would more aptly, I believe, be benefited if we continue to pay our bills. So my intention would be to vote to send them to the general fund.
Any other comments from counselors?
Whatever decision we make tonight, does that continue in perpetuity until for whatever reason, we decide to revisit it or another request is made of similar nature from SAN?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, because in one case, while it doesn't appear that it was ratified by part of the motion, it was part of the discussion on, where those monies were going to be allocated previously. The council does have the discretion to direct those monies. So if we would have a motion and a second and a successful vote, that's what's on the table, and you could make the motion for 1 year or multiple years. It could be changed, obviously.
Well, with that, I have to agree with Jesse. I think it was set aside, November 3rd, 2021, in a meeting. And like Jesse said, with the Monahan family and the business, with that, I would motion that we split the money 50-50 to the endowment and to the charities from the Monahan marks.
So the Heritage Mark proceeds, split 50-50 to the Sturgis Rally Charities and the Sturgis Rally Endowment. So there's a first by Tony. Is there a second for?
Can I ask, is that, so that would not be going to the community center then? Is that how I'm understanding that?
I believe that one of the things that was brought up was that if it goes to the charities, then the community center could then make a request to the charities for that money.
If we'd like to continue the discussion on this, we should truly have a second, though. Not that you have to vote that way, but
I'll second.
great. We've got a second for splitting the Heritage Mark proceeds 50-50. So continuing the discussion on that, I can share that I spoke with Sam this afternoon, and he indicated that he was fine with applying for grant monies through the rally charities, that he had, after the last discussion, had worked with several of the rally charities committee and thought that there was a path forward for that. In fact, you don't see Sam in the audience tonight because he asked me to share that. Is there any further discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Anything from the public? I think this ties, yeah, Robin?
I don't know if this is the right time, but anyway.
Yeah, would you state your name, please?
My name is Robin Baldwin. I own Black Hills Rally and Gold, and I'm the other other business that uses this mark and pays royalty. So I did learn earlier through Lance that the council is who makes the decision on how that money is used. When I formed my contract, I was told that it would be split between the two. However, when I reached out to Lance to see if that would still be the case, with the city being in financial change, he did say that that's up to the council. So I think a lot of you are new, and you're probably not familiar with royalties. I don't know if any of you have ever worked with royalties, paid royalties, know how that works. This particular mark was donated by the Monahan family to the chamber in the 90s, and any of us that used it paid a royalty on it, and the chamber managed it. Over the course of many years, the chamber had other entities that they hired to do that, and then eventually it landed with SMRI. And then after a legal battle, that was turned down, and then the logo was sold because they were selling their assets. And San and I were prepared to buy the logo, but the city stepped up before the auction even started, or the bidding, whatever it was called, and bought it. And so consequently, they now manage it. The way that a royalty works is you pay money in, and whoever you're paying that royalty to promotes that logo, and promotes it because the more you use it, the more royalties they're going to get. Well, shortly after they bought that, they rebranded. So now what we've called the official mark forever and ever is no longer allowed to be called that. It's now the heritage mark. So gradually over the last couple of years, we have completely changed our labeling and now call it the heritage mark. And I pay a royalty every year based on the sales of whatever that I use that logo on. And I do an estimate in October of what I think that's going to be, and then I have until January to pay it. I always pay it in December because I want it on the fiscal year. So that being said, one of the things in my contract that's kind of different from other contracts is that the city is going to keep raising my royalty percentage. It's been for the last 3 years exactly where it was with everybody that I've ever paid a royalty to. But under the city, it's now going to go up, which I kind of went around with, and Lance said, no, there was nothing that we could do about that. It has to go up. So that being said, then I feel like it needs to be promoted more if I'm going to be paying more. But the bottom line is that I was told when I first started that this would be split. And I don't have it in writing. It was a verbal agreement. So I don't have any way to insist that that's how it's used, but I certainly would like to request that that's how it's used. Because those royalty monies have always been meant to go back to the community in whatever fashion. And at this point, Rally Charities is the one place that truly does do that. So I guess in making the decision on Sands, I would also be interested in you considering this as well, and if I need to come to another meeting and present that for you to vote on or whatever. But I just thought that this was the appropriate time to kind of give those of you that are new a history of what's gone on over the past 3 years now. And hopefully contract here in the next short while, because typically we're already ordering the things that we do for Rally next year. And so I want to continue to sell those, and I want to continue to work with the city. I would like to continue with the idea that the money does go where I was originally told it would go. Any questions about that? Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Does anybody else have a comment from? So there was a valid point about, Tony, was your intent in your motion for the Monahan portion of the Heritage Mark proceeds?
Both of them.
Both of them.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I agree.
Is there any other discussion that we want to have on this matter? All right. I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. Those in favor of the motion to split the Heritage Mark proceeds from the two contract holders to 50% Sturgis Rally Charities and 50% Sturgis Rally Endowment indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Those opposed?
No.
That motion carries. All right, that's the end of our tabled items. Continuing on our agenda to item 7.1. That's a payroll change, and actually that's a new hire. And so that's a position that's been open, a sanitation operator. I think Public Works is going to be pretty happy to have that spot filled. Item 8 is the consent agenda. We've got 8.1 that is consideration to approve the minutes from the November 4th meeting and the special council meeting on November 12th, and consideration to approve temporary road closure for the Sturgis Chamber Parade of Lights. Does anybody want to remove either of those items from the consent agenda and consider it separately? Hearing.
Do 8.2 just to give the map or the layout of where the parade route will be?
I think when we get in, I'll just read the parade route off. Would somebody be willing to make a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
First by Ruth, second by Jesse. Those in favor of approving the consent agenda indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. So I'm going to read the parade route very quickly here. Parade floats move south and east from the United Methodist Church down Ballpark Road towards Junction Avenue. Turn left onto Junction Avenue. Turn right onto Harmon Street. Turn left onto Fulton Street. Turn left onto Park Street. Turn right onto Junction Avenue and follow for 10 blocks. Turn left onto Main Street and follow for 4 blocks. And so after the traveling west on Main Street, we end 4 blocks up at the Law Enforcement Center. Is that correct? That's probably hard to understand on the reading, but I guess we've got a little image on the That's where all the people will be parked on the
And they go around Harmon for the,
nursing home. Yeah, good move there. Item 9 is approval of claims, and we've got a couple adjustments to make within the claims. Bear with me while I get that notice open. There was a couple of the claims that were put in the wrong spot. We got an invoice from Border States Electric that it was a duplicate invoice. It was entered under both library and buildings, so we need to remove the library Border States Electric charge for $88.50. We've got a Kone Incorporated invoice, that's an elevator company. Invoice is for $227.85, was entered under capital improvement. It should be listed under buildings. So we have two actions. One is to remove. If there's a motion to approve the claims, it would need to include the removal of the second Border States Electric invoice under library and move the Kone invoice from capital improvements to buildings. Is there any other questions or items on the claims that we need to discuss? Anything from the public? Do we have a motion on the claims?
I'll make a motion with the aforementioned differences that you stated.
Okay. First by Jim.
I'll second.
Second on the claims from Nick. Those in favor of approving the claims with the amendments indicate by stating yes.
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 Those opposed, no. All right, we're through the claims. Item 10 is a public hearing. This is consideration to approve Resolution 2024-61, the voluntary de-annexation of a portion. There's a legal description. Basically, this is Sly Hill Road at the top of the hill.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Up for consideration is to approve the resolution of 2024-61, which is the exclusion from the city corporate limits, otherwise known as a de-annexation. It is the portion of the southeast quarter, the southwest quarter lying north of Bear Butte Road, a portion of Government Lot 7 lying north of Bear Butte Road, and Lot X2 of Lot X of the southwest quarter, all located in the south half of Section 3, Township 5 North, Range 5 East, Black Hills Meridian, City of Sturgis, Meade County, South Dakota. This is a development that contains about 6 being developed as the Whiskey Ridge subdivision. This is everything to the north side of the road, basically going up Sly Hill. On the south side of Sly Hill is the city parkland. The reason that the developers are asking for this to go through an exclusion process is because the city does not have the ability to provide normal services to this property. Given the location and the topography, we can't get water there, we can't get sewer there. We have a difficult time even providing garbage services. And with the development, we would not have that ability. In addition, it probably doesn't make sense for this property to be built with sidewalks, curb and gutter, things that would typically be in play on a city development because there's nothing for them to tie into. So the developers did come to the MUB board almost a year ago, and the MUB did grant them the authority to drill a private water system. That was approved by the state, so that has been done. And then basically the infrastructure that is being put in place is being put in place in accordance with Meade County subdivision ordinance. So they'll have to follow all of those rules and regulations. One of the things that did come forth was the services that are being provided or not provided, and how would that affect So I did reach out to the police, to the fire, to the ambulance. Fire chief actually came back and said that there's more fire protection with it being in the county, because if they had to build it to county specs, they'll have to have an on-site cistern water storage system up there, which in the city we wouldn't have. So the next closest water point would be down around the corner, down by the Dahl's property to the fire hydrant there. So that he felt that there was actually some increased benefits. Ambulance, they would still respond. This property will. Every year, I talk to the Rural Ambulance Board, and every year, no different than properties that get annexed into the city, the same process happens, and they go through and get a listing of all the different properties, and then they have to certify them. So this property will end up being assessed to the rural ambulance district. They'll pay, each lot will pay whatever that fee is to the rural ambulance. And then the police, of course, through mutual aid, the nearest responding agency is going to respond regardless for life, safety, health reasons. For us, we did collect garbage at the old Regan place up there. We no longer will have to do that because we, of course, won't go in. We're not going to be responsible for the roads in this subdivision. They'll be handled maintenance-wise and snow removal through the developers and their homeowners association. So neither the county or the city will have any responsibilities there. The city will still maintain and provide maintenance on Bear Butte Road all the way up to the top where we normally do now. So there's no gain or loss there from city services either. So staff does recommend approval of this. Once this is done, the resolution is signed and it's filed at the county, and then it becomes a county property once again. We have visited several occasions with the county staff, and they are we've got a plan that you'll see, I believe, coming to the next council meeting, which will be a redistricting of our 3-mile agreement or an amendment to it that will remove this property from city jurisdiction, place it into the area under county jurisdiction, and that's what gives them the authority to do all of the build it to the county specs, and the county do all of the inspections and ensure that it's built to their standards. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Good report, Rick. I've got one statement myself that, the state law spells out that a public road that is cited by city property is a city-owned road, correct?
Correct. That law became effective this past July.
So this de-annexation really doesn't change our obligation to the Sly Hill Road.
No.
Yeah. I guess the other comment I'd make, and I think, all the owners, there's several of them in the audience tonight, that they'd be committed to working with the Meade County Rural Ambulance to get their properties brought into that so that they were part of that protection.
They won't. My understanding, talking to the board this afternoon, is they won't have a choice. I mean,
They won't have a choice.
the county will list all of the properties, and then the rural ambulance district has to certify those. So no different than as we annex property in, it gets removed from that and becomes in the city, so that property gets removed from that. They go through it similar to a road district or any other district, and the governing entity, which would in this case be the rural ambulance, would have to certify those properties.
Great. Thank you for the clarification. Any questions from the council?
Very thorough. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone ready to make a motion?
I'll motion to approve Resolution 2024-61.
I'll second it.
First by Ruth, second by Tony. Is there any further discussion? How about discussion from the public? Those in favor of approval of Resolution 2024-61 indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. That motion carried. Item 10.2 on our agenda is approval of a retail on-off sale wine and cider license for Smokes and Things. That's the old Subway building for people that remember when Subway was there. This is a new license. I guess the only thing that I can add to make the agenda report is we do collect a 5%. Maybe somebody can help me out on that 5% beer tax. So not only do we have the general taxes, but we have in the community a tax that goes on beer-only establishments of 5%. Hope I didn't misstate there. Is there any discussion on this? Somebody want to make a motion?
I would just ask Chief if he could see any. Chief, do you see any issue with this at all?
Well, this is just to set a public hearing, isn't that right? That's what the staff report says.
Well, it's actually to approve the license.
Okay, so the staff report is.
I think it just got recycled. I didn't get, pardon me for not catching that, I guess. This is to actually approve the license.
I motion to approve.
Second.
First by Tony, second by Nick, to approve the retail on-off sale license for wine and cider to Smokes and Things. Those in favor indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. All right, thank you. On to item 11, Rose Engineering and our annual bridge inspection. (11-1), I should say.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Up next is Zach Wisely to give you our report on our biannual bridge inspection report. We're bound to do this inspection biannually every 2 years. I believe we have 9 structures in the city of Sturgis, and I think only 7 of them require the certification, but Mr. Wisely will be giving you kind of an update on the condition of those bridges and what, if any, next steps are necessary for those.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. As Mr. Rick said, we are obligated to look at all structures over 20 feet every 24 months unless they are in poor condition, which thankfully none of yours are. Speak closer into the microphone. My apologies. Yes, we had 6 structures that we looked at this cycle in the city of Sturgis out of your 9 structures. Basically, all of them are in very excellent or very good condition overall. This first structure is actually over by our office in the city of Sturgis, and you just completed a rehabilitation project last year. So the approach guardrails were redone and some channel work was done and it was overlaid, and now it is in very excellent condition again. If you want to scroll down, there is a photo of the new overlay, as most have probably seen if you use the Whitewood Service Road. On to the next slide. I mean, there are some very minor non-structural cracks, and the condition ratings that are used to set the condition of the structure reflect that it is in very good condition. Moving on to that is a map showing just where it is, and the next structure down the road is as well in very good condition. It was just completed in 2019. There's really no comments I have to make of this other than we have to look at them every 2 years. So excellent condition, and a map showing you where it is in the city of Sturgis. And then 47030 429, again built in 1998. Excellent condition. There's some typical superficial, non-structural cracking to the grout rub finish on the jersey barriers. So it's essentially nothing worth talking about, but we only had 6 structures to talk about, so I'm trying to cram 5 minutes into 10 minutes. So, and then moving on to a couple of box culverts on the drainage way through the city of Sturgis itself. Built in 1979, they have some general normal wear and tear to the floors of the culvert. Although we noticed that the Public Works Department went in and sealed all of the cracks so that there's no way for water to get underneath the concrete and undermine it, knead it out, and have bigger problems down the road. So a pat on the back for very excellent preventative maintenance. And then the next structure down the road is exactly the same, except it's longer and curved. Same general wear that has been patched and maintained in a very considerate way. And there is some minor scaling to one of the wing walls at the corner that kind of helps direct it into there. But honestly, the defect wasn't even bad enough to warrant a photo to include. So you guys have also done some maintenance to these structures. There's some very general, light scaling where the concrete's starting to come apart, but it's thick enough to where we're not even worried about that at this time. And again, all of the cracks in the floor had been sealed along the flow line. So another quite excellent repair, and we expect that those repairs will be continued as they become necessary, but at this point there is no further repair that we require or would recommend, I should say. Let me catch up on my sheets. And the last one is it's on the entrance to a park, I believe, Bear Butte Creek over Sly Creek. And it is a 6-barrel corrugated metal pipe. And as you'd expect of something that's 11 years old now, there's about a 3-foot wide area on the bottom of each of the barrels that does have some beginning corrosion, but it doesn't have any holes through it. There's no evidence that it's becoming weak. And honestly, off the top of my head, I don't believe there's even anything you would want to, no coatings or anything like that would help prevent any corrosion. So we could look further into that if desired. However, there's almost nothing to say about that other than there's guardrail in place, although there is, I believe, technically supposed to be some delineators and type 2 object markers to delineate the structure. However, it's a very low speed situation, so we made the recommendation that we should potentially add signs, but we recognize it's a very slow speed area and likely everyone through there is very familiar with it. So that concludes my report. If there are any questions, feel free.
Any questions from anyone? We love great reports like that.
I love being able to deliver a report and pat the gentleman on the back and say, good job, keep up the good work, and not have to bring a table item of, oh, we need to replace this $2 million structure. So excellent work, keep up the good work.
As a note, this is the program that's responsible. When we were talking about the Whitewood Service Bridge, we had just gotten awarded a big preservation of bridge improvement grant, preservation grant to do those repairs, and we were eligible for those because we participate in this program. These inspections, the state pays a percentage of them and the city pays a percentage of them, and we do them every 2 years. But that's part of the reason we're able to apply and receive those grants. And that particular grant, the city was only responsible for 20%. I forget off the top of my head what the dollar amount was. I want to say it was somewhere around $600,000. So a very good deal, and that's why we do these inspections and stay compliant. And the other ones, just so happens that the Corps of Engineers was out doing their annual inspection last week. So we do get a list of all the things that they determine we need to fix, and then we have till the next year to repair those to stay compliant and in good standing with the Corps of Engineers. So I can't take all the credit. At some level, we have to do those repairs, but certainly we want to stay on top of them. So
And that's in the Dead Man Channel,
that's in the
correct?
Dead Man Channel, correct?
Good job, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
No more questions? All right, proceeding on to 11.2, 2025 budget discussion. Rick, I don't think you needed to go anywhere. First budget we're going to talk about tonight in our 2024, I said 2024, I meant 2025. 2025 budget discussion is cemetery. Rick, you've managed to cut out of that budget, you know, a substantial amount, far more than 10%. Can you kind of talk about how you managed to do that and what projects you're going to continue to do at the cemetery?
Sure, and kind of the continuing theme that we'll have tonight, we didn't necessarily cut services or projects where we tried to avoid having to do that. A part of this, you know, we were able to save $22,186 between the 24 budget and the proposed 25 budget. Some of that was due to the wages being reduced. We had a long-standing employee who retired. We have not backfilled that, excuse me, that position, the cemetery sexton position, but we're hopeful that at some point in time we will. Those wages, of course, will be significantly less than that of a person that had, 30 years of service. So also we removed the PubWorks software and we reallocated that to the divisions of Public Works that really primarily use it. The cemetery is not one that really uses the PubWorks software. It's got its own SIM software, so we did pull that out of there. We were able to reduce some maintenance items such as equipment, vehicles, shops, ground repairs. We reduced them all incrementally. Line items, other line items that were reduced included fuel, tools, supplies, flags, and flag poles. Some of the items that we did cut altogether were sand, flower beds, safety equipment, and then again, training and travel, I think, is going to be a reoccurring theme through many of the department, not just Public Works, but all of the departments. We've cut a lot of training and travel out. So that's really where we were able to gain those savings in the cemetery, was just by incrementally reducing a little bit out of each one of the budgets. And in doing that, we don't necessarily have to cut any services. And honestly, we have some things planned with the 2025 budget. There's some increases in there. For example, our scatter garden, things like that we'll have in the future. So we're continuing to provide more with a little bit less.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? How about from the public on the cemetery 2025 budget?
Just a quick question, what's the WB updated? What is the WB stand for?
Question on one item. What is the WB updated? Oh, you're talking about the file name?
Workbook.
Workbook, yeah. So it was just the file name off of what we've been using for some of the base calculations for this. Again, this, I didn't state this, I did at our last meeting. This is a first pass. We're still waiting for final reconciliation of our revenue numbers from a third-party CPA firm to help make sure that we have the monies to spend that we think that we're gonna have. We don't have that yet. We're hoping that everything that we discuss here holds, but if it doesn't, we're gonna have to take another crack at this, and let's hope that we don't have to. And thank you for, keeping these going forward, Rick, and keeping our expenses under control. So moving on to engineering. Engineering's one that we've made quite a change in.
Right, so engineering is as of to date, is one of the only departments that has lost or positions have been cut. So both the city engineer and the staff engineer positions for 2025 have been eliminated. We did lose our city engineer almost a year ago and have not been able to find a replacement for the money that we had allocated for that. With that being said, it was difficult to come to the conclusion that it's hard to have a staff engineer who doesn't have any licensure that's, they really rely on the city engineer to be able to stamp plans. So we're pretty limited on what we're able to do, and any of the workflow that ends up getting done from the staff engineer, we have to hire a third-party consultant to review it and then stamp and seal it. And it really probably is not effective. So that position was anticipated to be eliminated. In talking with our staff engineer, he immediately started looking for another place of employment, and he did find one and has given notice that he has taken another position. So we're glad that we were able to help him relocate and kind of helps us out here. So at the end of the day, we're not having to lay anybody off. So with that, what we did take a look at doing is utilizing a third-party engineer, hiring them to do our plan review. Most of the time when we have capital projects, the engineering is included in those projects. So very rarely are we turning out projects out of the city. They may be some small stuff, but for the most part, the engineering department ended up doing a lot of project management and administration. So it ended up working out all right, and we save a little bit of money by hiring that out as a third party. The only other expense that we have in there is for our flood gauging stations. That is kept in there, and that actually increased a little bit, just over $14,000. And then we left the professional fees of $50,000 in for our consultants. So we were able to reduce this budget by almost $127,000, resulting in a savings to the city.
And in your opinion, with the outsourcing, we're going to be accessing a company that would have specialists in all types of engineering. So chances are we're going to see efficiency in some of the reviews that we do.
Without a doubt, when we hire a company, we typically, you'll see one face who is the lead, but when they go back to their office, they have dozens of people that specialize in different aspects of engineering, and so we do get a better perspective and a better end result in our plan review.
Okay, and you're comfortable with the professional fees of $50,000?
Yeah, like I said, most of our projects, the big projects that we put out, and anything certainly that's coming on a capital improvement or an SRF, all of the engineering is a part of those loan packages, so that wouldn't come out of here. This is strictly internal plan review, things like that. So that's kind of what we're tracking and trending is that amount, and in other years it could go down if we have a heavy lift. We may be looking at changing that in 26, 27 as we go through and tackle our capital improvement project. That's what's going to kind of dictate what we're going to be doing in-house versus outsourcing.
Okay, great. Any questions from council or the public? Thanks. Moving on. The next budget that we're going to take a look at is 4520. It's our parks budget. Maybe a high-level overview of, we have a lot of park properties in our community. It includes our baseball fields.
Yeah, we have parks takes care of a tremendous amount of both property and assets for the city. everything from all the ball fields to the parks to all the neighborhood parks, the Fort Meade Recreation Area, both the softball fields that are underneath of the community center. We take care of the community center properties. We remove snow from the liquor store, from the animal shelter, the fire hall. So we do, Parks certainly has a heavy lift when it comes to the community. We do the snow removal around City Hall. So certainly, that's a tough one. We were able to carve out about $92,000 out of our budget. Some of that came along the same lines. Our wages had a few long-term employees who have retired, and then of course hiring new people in. They start at a much lower wage. Some line items that were cut, and we don't have a big use for it, would be some IT. You know, we have had discussions that we've got a fair amount of machines that are going to be end of life towards the end of 2025. I think we can get by. Certainly in our 2026 budget, we're probably going to have to have a plan to replace some of those. But as an interim, to get a balanced budget for 2025, we did remove that. We removed some of our line items at the girls' softball complex, bleacher railing, tree replacement, some mosquito and weed spraying, flower planting supplies, and then again, training and travel. Some of our line items that we reduced included equipment repairs, vehicle repairs, gravel and asphalt, snow removal repairs, diamond drive, contractual services such as our portable toilets that we pay for example, the Rally Point. Those are paid by the Parks Department. We have portable toilets that are out by the parks and down by the pump track. All of those get paid out of parks. Some fence repairs, fuel, grass seed, just a number of things. You know, one of the things that we're looking at doing, or that we did do, is we had a replacement schedule for a lot of our hand tools and small engines, our weed eaters, our leaf blowers. We like to, you know, I've got 15 leaf blowers and weed eaters, and we try and replace a certain number of them each year and go through a rotation. For 2025, we won't do that. We'll run them a little bit longer and make the necessary repairs to keep them going, versus having some surplus and replacing them out. Again, it's not a long-term strategy, but at least for 2025, it will help us reach to where we're comfortable in getting a balanced budget and kind of our part. So that's kind of where we're at. We didn't as of today have to cut any services that we're going to that we provide to the community, but certainly we have a little bit built into our budget that we'll probably have to monitor a little closely. A lot of our projects, when the different groups come to us, whether it's our own with Rod and Judd at the community center and the recreation, or it's the girls softball or the soccer, they come to us and want littler, smaller projects done, and we're able a lot of times to handle those through our budget. We have money in there for those things that don't traditionally meet that capital improvement threshold of a larger project. So some of those projects will have to shift a little bit, and we may not be able to do all of the different little things that we do each and every year. You know, we're going to be tightening our belt for sure, and some of those things will certainly have to look at what we're able to do and what we're not able to do.
And obviously, the goal is for the council to have contingency. So with contingency funds, not saying that opens a floodgate of any sort, but I mean, that's how you can handle those spends as a council, as you know, if we come to those.
Yeah, we've got to do a better job of following our policies. I mean, we do have an agreement with all of the sports groups. You know, they're supposed to submit to us each year. They sign off what is their duties, what is the city's duties. They're supposed to give us a wish list or a repair list of things that they've noticed they'd like to have done or fixed at their facilities, so we get those ahead of time and we can kind of work them in, and then, we'll hope that maybe it's a wetter year next year and we don't have to water as much. That is a big part of the park budget is water. We pay for all of the irrigation, all the water that we sprinkle on all the parks, the sports fields, all of that. We certainly pay for it, and there's some months where we have a $30,000 or higher water bill that we're paying back to the water, the enterprise fund. So some of those things will have to be we'll have to take a look at them, and will have to be considered as well.
Right, and from our discussion at Legal and Finance, I mean, there might be some options. We are doing some swapping of funds, if you will. I mean, these places are paying these fees into our utility funds, our enterprise funds, and then we're making administrative transfers back across to help shore up the general fund, and we don't necessarily have to do that from the discussion that we had. So there might be some ways that we can create some governmental efficiencies, I guess. That might be the best way to state that. All right, well, thank you, Rick. I mean, it's always tough. I appreciate you taking your budgets and working through them. Since you're sitting there,
I just have a quick question.
Okay.
Just for a point of clarity, you're talking about you have a schedule of repairs for some equipment, small engines and things like that, and not doing them for this coming year. Are you taking that schedule and just shifting the whole thing, or are you going to take those repairs and put them on top of 2026?
No, we would likely, if we're able to get through, we'll shift them, so we won't double stack
Okay.
in 2026. We'll either be able to repair them and get another year or 2 years out of them, or we'll be short, 1 or 2 weed eaters. They don't last forever. We're fortunate enough that we rely heavily on our seasonal helpers. Kind of hits right when we're getting ready to do all the mowing and they do. They don't, when you run them every day, they don't last very long. And all it takes is, a few times of getting the fuel oil mixture off and they burn up. But we feel comfortable that we can put that off a year and still maintain,
Thank you.
any other questions? How about any questions from the public? All right, I'm going to go ahead and go out of order a little bit just because you're sitting there, Rick. Can we talk about street lighting?
Sure. Street lighting's pretty easy. Street lighting is basically, and that's one of my few budgets that didn't go down. There was a slight increase, kind of out of our control. Street lighting, basically the only thing that's in that is the utility costs, and maybe more for the public and people who are listening online. The city's responsibility is for any metal poles or galvanized poles, any metal street lights, traffic signals, anything that's on a wood pole is Black Hills Power and Light. They're responsible for the maintenance of it. They're responsible for pretty much everything on it. The only thing we do is we pay a per pole price for the power. So each month we have a number of poles, but when a street light is out on a wooden pole, we gather that information up and we submit it to Black Hills Power and Light, and they go out and fix it. If it's a metal pole, which is traditionally on Lizelle and on Junction and Main Street, and now we have some new ones up in the Dolan Creek subdivision that those developers put in metal poles, that's all us. So outside of the utility, the cost to run the street lights, the only thing we have is replacing heads and photo eyes and things of that nature when they burn out, and they do burn out. I don't know if any of you noticed, we started getting a really purple hue on some of our street lights on Junction, and that was the LEDs going out of them. they prematurely. Those LEDs are supposed to consume less energy and last longer. Those were up less than a year, and they started to turn purple, which is the LED going out. So we did replace those, but each one of those heads is fairly expensive when you have to, there's no rebuilding. You could rebuild them, put a new bulb in them, put new ballast in them, new photo eyes. The LED heads are not rebuildable, so you have to simply replace the whole head. That's what the line item in there for the $30,000 for the repair and maintenance is streetlight heads and photo eyes. So as we get to a point where the old ballast bulb street lights go out, we do replace them with LEDs.
Well, hopefully they provide us a better than a 1-year warranty on those.
There is some warranty. We did turn those in, and they didn't qualify. They had been up long enough that they didn't qualify. So
Value engineering, right?
right.
Any questions about street lighting? How about from the public? Continuing off our cycle here a bit. Gonna stay with streets.
So yeah, for streets, we were able to reduce that budget, $122,559. While we were able to reduce some line items, we had to increase others. What we just got done with tonight, the bridge inspections, that line item had to go up. The cost of doing business, certainly no matter what department you're in, is going up, and it takes more today to produce a gallon of water than what it did last year, and paint a lane mile of street, and to plow snow. I mean, everything costs more. So we certainly have to be cognizant of that. We did have an increase in some of our ice control liquids that we're trying to use more and more. Traffic paint, again, we don't control that cost. It continues to go up. But those are primarily things that are out of our control. And we have to just eat that increase when those goods the price on them increases. We don't have a choice but to use them. And for example, our traffic paints, we don't want to constantly be mixing different types of paints between water base and oil base. And you can shop and get a better deal on some things, but when it comes to things like that, we have to try and stay consistent and run the same paint and even the same brand of paint through our sprayers. It cuts down on the failures and the equipment repairs that we have to do. So a couple of the things that were cut, again, from our general fund streets, one of our general fund accounts was the pub work software. We did reallocate and are paying that more out of the enterprise funds. Training and travel was cut. Things that were reduced, we did reduce some fuel. Hopefully we'll see that fuel costs are hopefully going to be going down. Tack oil, some of our utilities, it appears that in the previous budget, some of those were wrong. One of the things, and I misspoke, when I told you our budget went down, it actually increased by $122,559. The reason that was, lease payment for our motor graders was removed from capital improvements into the street budget, and that alone is $140,366. So that was largely what that increase was.
Rick, why did we move that in this? And this budget was initially prepared by former staff.
I'm not sure why. I mean, some of it it seems like we have some back and forth with our auditors on whether or not that should come out of equipment replacement or should it come out of the the actual budget. Same thing with, we used to budget money in equipment replacement for garbage trucks, and then the auditor said, well, that really should be an asset of sanitation, and that one I can get a little bit more behind, because it's an enterprise fund, streets being a general fund. At the end of the day, the money's coming out of the same checkbook. Maybe it's a little clearer to have it in the streets, to see where those lease payments are coming from. But I guess I don't have a real good answer why, but that was what was put forward to me anyways. And again, being here as long as I have, I've seen them come out of a lot of different places. If you recall, that motor grader that we have now that is on a lease, that was one that we were supposed to be buying, and then we were going to buy another one this year, so that we can have adequate equipment. As we grow as a city, we're taking on miles and miles of lane miles, more to do, more to maintain, more to remove snow from. Probably one of the biggest things that we have, and probably both in parks and in streets, is some of the equipment that we have. I mean, we're running, street sweepers that are 30 plus years old, and I have to have them. I mean, we couldn't be without them, number one, for the rally, but also we run them year round. I mean, we're out picking up leaves now. I mean, that's part of how we're able to keep our town looking nice and keeping it clean. But the longer we run those pieces of equipment, every year it gets more and more expensive, because it's harder to find parts, and the parts become, there's fewer of them, so they raise the price on them. I think that it certainly, we could create some efficiencies and some savings by having newer equipment, but we don't have the budget necessarily to do that. But we also need to be cognizant that we have to start planning for that. Again, I can't do the same level of service and do what we do without two street sweepers, and both of ours are that age. Again, our motor graders, I've got one that's 34 years old, one that's 41 years old, two that are 37 years old. The two that are 37 years old are old champions. They're obsolete. I can't even find parts for them. They no longer make them.
Those are the military ones.
Yeah, so we have got to start thinking about, how we transition and replace those. Again, that was part of the equipment replacement that we had, was we were supposed to be buying those and turning some of those out and surplusing them. We ended up in 2022, we did do a lease, which is the one that we have now. That payment in there, that $140,000 is two lease payments. So each year, or it was, our lease payment was, we just made it here the other day. Actually, it'll be on next council's claims. It's about $70,000. So that $140,000 does include to get that other piece of machinery. It's about a year out from when I put the order in, and we've held off to this point, but we'll likely be looking at what our options are on those leases, and they're a really good deal. We have the option to lease them for 5 years, and then we can buy them outright. So it's a pretty good deal, or we could turn the lease back in.
Rick, can you tell us what the lease covers on their end, like what they come and do for you?
So yeah, the lease, the lease, and typically our motor graders, we're primarily snow removal. We have a little bit of gravel that we maintain, but they come in and pretty much do all of the repairs. If one of those machines goes down and they can't get it back up within 24 hours, they bring us a replacement. That's part of the lease package, so that we're never down, and that cost is on John Deere, RDO. So it's a pretty good deal. We don't even have to do the oil changes. I mean, it's all taken care of through the lease package. Once we purchase them, or if we decide at the 5 years to purchase them, then we take on some of that We don't put enough hours on them. I mean, most of that machinery is based on hours, and so a typical, I can share that with you, a typical replacement cycle for a motor grader is 12 to 15 years, and that is based on about 1,500 hours per year. We're closer to 500 hours per year. So our equipment lasts a lot longer, but still, when we get into the 30 and 40 years, I mean, we've lived the likely life cycle of it. We start to lose money at that point. It costs more to do the repairs. We have no value in them. If we're going to try and trade them out, there's no trade value at that point in time. So again, having a good program of equipment replacement across the board is going to be pretty important.
Thanks, Rick. I'm definitely interested in digging a little bit more into the equipment replacement funds and the payments that are coming out of the general fund on that, and making sure that we're fully understanding transfers between those funds, because in the past we have made transfers out of those funds, and this would be a reason to do it. I mean, not to make that payment out of a reserve fund, because it's per the auditor's request, it needs to come out of the budget that it's operating under, part of that inventory. But fully understanding our transfers, so that's a talking point. So we're reaching out a little bit into our long range on this, but when do you expect the street sweepers to kind of be, or one of them to become I mean, honestly, that is an important tool. You know, if we had a street sweeper down at different times of the year, it would be a problem for us.
So you know, the manufacturers, the salesmen come out and they're amazed at the condition that they're in. Again, the guys do a really good job of taking care of them, but I don't think that we're going to have a significant failure anytime soon. But the harder part is the wear. I mean, on a street sweeper, there's a lot of wear parts. The street sweepers we have are to an age where they're old enough, and they actually have two engines on them. They have one that drives the piece of equipment itself, that propels it and moves it, and then the other engine is actually the sweeper part of it, the vacuum and the brooms. So you have, you know, twice the probability of something happening with one of the engines versus the newer ones are a single engine. But again, you know, they could last another 10 years, or knock on wood, you know, could be tomorrow. But when it does go down, if we're not able to fix it, you know, that becomes our only other option, is to replace it. And when we talk about big equipment, it's not something that necessarily is sitting on a lot somewhere. A lot of times you have to order it, and there can be anywhere of up to a year to over a year lead time to get that stuff. So again, trying to figure out what the proper, you know, plan is, or have a plan for replacing some of that stuff is pretty important.
Great. Anybody have any questions on the streets budget?
Off the top, sorry.
Go ahead.
Off the top of your head, how much you think one of those run? A street sweeper?
Street sweeper, probably at least $250,000. I mean, a motor grader right now is $490,000, $500,000. You know, a garbage truck, same. I mean, $400,000.
Rick, do we have staff that take care of those on a regular basis? I'm assuming so, but I've never asked you that question.
Absolutely. You know, we number one, we have our fleet department, and they handle some of the more more delicate or intricate things that need to happen, but certainly the daily maintenance is done by the operators, whether it's snow removal equipment or the sweepers or dump trucks. Everything, you know, before we use it gets a pre-trip inspection. They go through it. They If there is something wrong with it, we put in a work order, identify what it is, and then it's a good tool for me to track it. And then every morning I meet with the supervisors, and one of them being our fleet mechanic, and we prioritize, what needs to be fixed, what's the priority, what we need to do. For example, here yesterday or over the weekend, Saturday, our loader went down at the rubble site, so it became a priority for this morning to get that back up and running. And parts, we've got a good crew that they can get a lot of things done. We have lost a few pieces of equipment. We had a frame crack on one of our garbage trucks. So we took the body of it off and put it on another one. Same thing with a dump truck. We lost a dump truck this year. The transmission went out on it. So we took that dump body off and put it on a semi that we had and converted it into a new dump truck. The guys are able to do, we have a great crew that can do a lot of that heavy fabricating. And we have, a minimal amount of money into that. It's basically the steel and some parts that we need. But, we make that stuff last and go as far as we can. But, right there, we're short 2 pieces of equipment that we normally would have had. So it's great that we can do that, but we can't do that always. I mean, at some point in time, I don't think we've ever, to be honest with you, when I look at our inventory, dump trucks, I mean, most of our dump trucks are former garbage trucks. And so with a garbage truck, of course, the packer body wears out way before the chassis. I mean, because it's moving and pushing and compressing every day. So traditionally, we'll take those chassis and put a dump box on them, turn them into a dump truck. We've got another one that was a DOT surplus, so we picked it up. I don't think, like I said, we've ever had a brand new dump truck. We've always tried to recycle them and get the kind of the most bang out of the buck. But looking through my list here, we've got a dump truck 41 years old, 31 years old, 25, 33, 31. They're getting to the point where there's not enough of it left to fix. I mean, we're wearing them out. So certainly, again, we have to be cognizant of that and moving forward, put together a good plan.
Well, thanks for working on it, Rick. That streets budget is nearly $1 million in our budget, so it's a big piece of our community. Jim, your question segues real well into the next piece, and that's the fleet budget. And the fleet department does all the maintenance. I think Rick alluded to the record keeping system, which actually, when we do finally get rid of things, is a big plus for somebody buying some of those surplus items, that they can see the maintenance records anyway.
Right.
Rick, it does look like you were successful in our, we started this process of trying to cut 10% out of the budget, and it looks like you've accomplished that.
So fleet isn't near as involved as what you may think, and fleet is primarily the mechanics, and then they have a little bit of a budget for shop supplies. Any of the equipment repairs come out of whatever that piece. So in our inventory, each piece of equipment is assigned to a department. For example, all the snow removal stuff is assigned to streets, the garbage trucks, of course, sanitation. Each one of them have their allocated pickups, and everything has a place. So when those repairs are made, they're back billed to that department, and that comes out of that budget under repairs and machinery or supplies, if it's oil changes or whatever. Very, very rarely does it come out of the fleet budget. Like I said, those are just some shop materials. How we were able to reduce the fleet budget primarily was we had a placeholder in there for a mechanic, and we removed that position. So we don't anticipate hiring that position unless we would have a loss of one of our employees that are currently in there. We have a fleet superintendent, and then we have 2 mechanics, and we had that 4th position in there to hire. We don't get a lot of applications for mechanics. Of course, our wages are way lower than what a diesel mechanic can make in the private sector, so we don't get a lot of those. So we've had that position open for several years, and just simply don't get anybody that applies, and if they do, when they find out what the wage is, they don't want to come work for us. So we've had that in there for quite a while. We did remove it for the 2025 budget, and of course that's where we were able to make up a big part of the savings. Supplies and materials we were able to reduce by a small amount, $500, but again, it's all those small amounts that will add up to the bigger cause at the end. So again, trying to do our part in every one of our budgets that we were able to. Also, we did cancel, we had one of our mechanics, just through history, had a cell phone, a city-provided cell phone. We did remove that. We talked to him. He's like, yeah, nobody ever calls me on it anyways. So we did do it, and we did that citywide. Here a few months ago, we kind of did an inventory and a look at who all had city-provided phones and which ones we could get away with getting rid of, and just so happened that one of our mechanics was one of those.
Great. Any questions on fleet? How about from the public? All right, well, the next piece that I want to go over quickly, it's mostly set. The council already ratified our capital improvement plan. And that comes from not this council, but from a previous capital improvement long-range plan. We're not sure that we can completely fund it, but that includes things like some street replacements and pieces like that. We do see some transfers to and I expect that we're going to have to do that this year. Historically, we've made some transfers out of capital improvements into our general fund. Hopefully we can minimize that to keep the take from that budget down. And like so many things, capital improvements are a big piece that if we don't stay on the schedule, those price points, they accelerate pretty rapidly. Next year, we can see, if you see even a 5% increase on a $500,000 project is a substantial increase. So overall, Rick, do you have any, again, we're going to be looking at this last minute?
I think we're gonna have to evaluate it for sure. I think it's important, again, for maybe for the public to understand, where our capital improvement monies come from, and both capital improvements and equipment replacement come from a penny of the sales tax, and it gets divided. Half goes into capital improvements and half goes into equipment replacement. So it's sales tax money, and so when sales tax money is high, we have more to put into those funds. When it's down, we have less. We've got a number of projects, and we've been pretty fortunate. A lot of grant monies, a lot of RTPs, state revolving loan funds. A couple of the projects that are kind of in the works, but we're not quite sure how we're going to end up funding them. As the Highway 14A bike path, which is the addition of the bike path on the south side of Highway 14A from Moose Drive out to the trailer park. We were awarded a RTP grant on that, where the city, again, we pay 20%, the state pays 80% on those projects. Similar, the Moose Drive bike path project is another one that connects, from Ballpark on up, where we don't have any sidewalk, all the way basically down to our bike path where it crosses down by the creek. So that was a project that we've got an RTP grant on. In addition to that, we had planned on for 2025 rebuilding that road. We've got some drainage issues there. You know, we're likely going to have to push that out, at least to the beginning. I mean, that project is sitting there ready to go, but it's $1 million project on the city side, even with the RTP grants. So likely going to have to push that out maybe into 2026. So basically, all of our capital, the council did approve a capital improvement. I mean, we've got a 5-year capital improvement plan. Probably a lot of those things are gonna, I don't think we'll take them off of, you know, get rid of any of them, but likely they're gonna have to certainly shift. And
yeah.
they're not always road projects or bike projects. I mean, when we talk about capital improvements, I mean, we got a number of roofs and buildings that we need to fix. You know, those come out of a capital improvement is pretty much anything that's not general maintenance and is a bigger project, and it's kind of a one-time project. So pothole patching or crack sealing streets or overlays, those aren't necessarily capital improvement projects. A capital improvement project is a complete reconstruction of a street. That's something that you do maybe once every 20 or 25 years, or putting a new roof on a building. That roof then should last, you know, 15 plus years. So capital projects are those big one-time expenditures. Everything else we try and fit and get into more of our operating budget. So we do normal operating and normal maintenance of roads and things like that every year. We grind up stumps every certain amount of them every year. Those are more routine and in our normal budgets. The capital budget is really those big projects, things that we need to plan for.
So to summarize that, that's when we get down to the final budget approach to lead into a first reading, we're going to have to certainly be prioritizing, and many of those projects are certainly going to have to shift. I mean, some are, we've got a neighborhood that doesn't even have a way that non-motorized people can get up and get up out of it, you know, so.
For reference, in 2024, we had anticipated a little $19 million worth of capital improvement projects to be completed. For 2025, we did know we were going to be shorter, but we still had anticipated about $7 million worth of capital projects to be completed in 2025. So certainly those are going to have to shift.
Well, and the budget that you brought forward here is 2.8 million.
I'm looking at what the council approved. I
Right.
mean, yeah. So we've already
We've already shifted significantly. Does anybody have any comments on the capital improvement plan? How about from the public? The equipment replacement fund funded the same way out of sales tax dollars. There is a transfer showing of 100,000. I mean, I would be in favor of, because we're paying those motor grader leases and that's equipment replacement, that we should be transferring the lease amount out of that, but we'll tighten that up as we go forward. So making those small adjustments, I think, is reasonable. Does the rest of the council agree with that? You have anything more that you want to add in the?
No, I mean, pretty well covered that. I think that we truly need to come up with a plan. You know, one of the things that I've discussed with you and I'd like to see moving forward is not only having a equipment replacement fund, but also identifying each year what those particular pieces of equipment are. And you know, just again, for clarification for the public and everybody else, equipment replacement is not just public works. And so in equipment replacement, that's everything from the vehicles here that are used at City Hall, to the airport, to the liquor store. You know, it's all equipment. It's not, you know, probably the only thing that's not necessarily included in the equipment replacement fund is some of Jody's equipment. You know, of course, the ambulances and the firefighting equipment are handled through their budget, but everything else is pretty much equipment replacement fund. So it's not just public works equipment.
Well, and hopefully, I mean, we're doing our budget process quite condensed right now. Looking at those items on a 3 to 5 year cycle so that we had better foresight would be beneficial, and hopefully going forward the city's able to do that a little more tightly. Obviously, sometimes the best laid plan falls apart when something changes, but nonetheless, you know, having the boilerplate that we can build off of is good. Rick, your 3 enterprise funds, you know, that's a piece that in the last year, out of our, I think it was our water fund, we did a substantial transfer into the general fund to get us balanced.
Out of our water and wastewater
Water
both,
and wastewater.
we transferred
800,000, I
Yeah.
think. Where, you know, some of our budget pinch that we're under is because of those massive transfers. And so the direction on this is that we can't transfer as much first, and second, we need to build some reserves in those funds, at the same time managing them, on top of seeing costs go up and all of that. I mean, costs more to, you said it earlier, more to pump a gallon of water, more to treat a gallon of wastewater, more to haul a pound of trash.
So I think it's important, and again, you know, maybe a little bit of background information. You know, thus far, we've pretty much talked all about general fund balances. You know, everything that we've talked to thus far, I think in the prior meeting as well, has been general fund, which is all funded by sales tax, is funded by revenue, right?
And property tax.
The property tax rate. What we have now, what we're going to start to talk about is enterprise funds, and enterprise funds are a municipal accounting fund that's basically should be a separate bank account within a city government that's used to pay for services like water, wastewater, sanitation. Our liquor store is an enterprise fund. Ambulance is an enterprise fund. In the way that those are structured, are the cost of providing those services are covered entirely by the fees charged to the people who use them, similar to how a business would be ran. That means that we don't use, you know, we typically don't use general sales tax or property tax money for them, so we don't make appropriations into those funds either. We don't have to supplement the budgets. The only budgets that we supplement are the general fund budgets. But these enterprise funds are self-funded mini businesses, for example, where your water bill, all of that everybody pays in every month is supposed to go into that enterprise fund, and that's what's used to operate the water department, the daily operational, the yearly operational, and in addition to that, you should be building up a reserve, and you build that reserve up in your enterprise funds so that when something goes wrong, when a pump goes out or a piece of equipment goes out, you can be reactive to that and you can get it fixed and repaired immediately. You don't have to have an appropriation or a supplement done like you would a general fund. So they do suggest that we have about a 10% reserve based on your budget amount. Which again, sorry. I need my water. Through the history, we haven't been doing that. We haven't been maintaining our reserves. We've been transferring it out. So we do have to do a better job of
Right, so we still do have a administrative fee to general fund in this budget. I mean, it shows $210,000. That was our first pass. Now, there are some items that we we use out of the general fund funded positions that support our enterprise fund in the water department. That's primarily billing in the finance office, correct?
We've been doing an administrative fee as well as a transfer.
And we're down to just the administrative.
Right. There was still, I believe in the budget proposed, there was still transfers as well. In water and wastewater.
Well, we're gonna have to evaluate them at the last minute again, but, you know, myself, we've talked about that several times before, that we need these utilities to be sound and standing on their own.
Right.
And we can't use it to prop up our spending, so we're hoping that we can accomplish this heavy lift without requiring so much. Connected to this, Rick, I know we don't want to talk about any fee increases for our utility rates, but we are potentially looking at, 2.5–3% increase in our utility fees.
And some of that is in ordinance that requires those incremental fee increases.
Right, I believe our ordinance does say 3%, doesn't
Right.
it? So there's some pieces of this, again, not popular, but it's coming through municipal utility board, and it'll land on a council agenda sometime soon.
For sure.
Do we have any questions, Rick, of the water, the drinking water?
May I ask Rick, because this is still new information for me. Kevin said we transferred $800,000 last year,
Correct.
in this current year, 24.
23, I believe.
23.
Is that a standard use? By that I mean, do we anticipate that, or was that?
We transfer out of and not just the public works enterprise funds, the liquor store as well. Traditionally, we've transferred pretty heavy out of those enterprise funds.
But the liquor store, we anticipate that. That's the reason that we
Right.
run it. So it makes money to be able to pay departments that can't otherwise keep up their expenses particularly. But the 800,000, does that have to be replenished?
It doesn't have to be. I mean, you can do those. It's legal to do those intergovernmental transfers. Again, we've done it to a point where we've got no reserves.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The goal of these is to have adequate reserves and provide a quality utility service to our residents at the lowest
Right.
possible cost. Any questions from the public? All right, Rick, wastewater.
Kind of similar. I mean, I think that the conversations we're having on all three of the enterprise funds are going to resound through all of them. I mean, we can't continue to transfer out of them and not have a reserve. The wastewater, we built a brand new plant, and I was looking at the memo today from 2019 that talked about the staffing and the estimated cost. And again, that's why you're building up your reserves is so that when, not if, but when, those pieces of equipment wear out or go down, or we have to replace membranes or whatever, you have the money already in that account to handle it, and you don't have to go out and get a loan, or you don't have to try and figure out, most of those, when they go out, we have to replace them rather quickly. We can't not have a wastewater treatment plant that's not operational. We can't have a well that's not operational. We can't have, we've got to have adequate garbage trucks to be able to pick up the garbage. We've got to haul it to Belfouche every day. They increase their rates. We have to pay them. We have to plan for that stuff. So again, those enterprise funds, that's why we're all paying a monthly service bill, is so that we can run and operate those utilities.
Okay, with that,
I mean, there's not really any savings by reducing enterprise funds. I mean, it doesn't help the city budget. It doesn't help the general fund, which is what we're trying to really balance. The enterprise funds should be self-sustaining.
thank you for that statement. That's good. Any questions of the wastewater? How about from the public? Rick, we're almost done with you here.
Perfect.
Sanitation.
So do I need to point out that we had, and this is this is my biggest one, probably the oldest piece of equipment we have, our dozer at the landfill, 51 years old. I mean, we should have antique plates on that thing, right? Again, something that we've got to be cognizant of is the lifespan of our rubble site. We're hurting right now in our sanitation division. We're down to one full-time driver. We hired another that we're doing training, and then tonight we hired a third. We're still short one. My street department is having to pick up that slack. Every morning they go out and do cardboard and rubble routes, and try and get that done before we tackle any street projects. So, again, that was the reason why we were not able to do cleanup week. It had nothing to do with not wanting to do it, being lazy. My street guys who typically do the cleanup week were already busy, and at that point in time, they were helping out at the exit 32. They're doing recycling, they're doing the yard waste, again, they're doing the cardboard. So we staff to be able to comfortably get that done. We're down a garbage truck. We had one in an accident and about put it out of service. We were scheduled to buy a new garbage truck this year. That, of course, got put on hold. Those garbage trucks, they have to go to Belfouche every single day or at least every other day. They're on the highway, so we have to maintain them at a high level. Again, we can't go through the ports. We can't go through the weigh stations. Anything leaking on them will render them, they'll put them in op and we'll be down. So it's pretty imperative that we maintain good equipment and for public safety and for our employees' safety as well. We've had wheels come flying off of garbage trucks going down the highway at 55, 60 miles an hour, so we've had it several times in the last year. Again, we've put in some measures to hopefully prevent that, to help prevent that, but things happen. So again, it's just imperative. Again, an enterprise fund, we should be recouping that money so that when we need to replace that equipment, we're able to do it. But we've made those transfers out where we don't have those reserves.
And to point that out, in 2023, it was 147,000 that we transferred out. 214 is what it was looking like for this budget, and we need to correct those a little bit.
For sure.
And that's hopefully going to be accomplished through all the hard work that all of our departments have been doing. I mean, this hasn't been an easy process, has it?
No. And we get beat up a little bit on our rubble site prices, but the way that we would need to combat that is to charge by weight, have a scale. We looked at putting a scale in up there, and it was that was 3 or 4 years ago, and it was in excess of $1 million. So we don't have any choice but to then go back to some kind of a volume calculation, and then again, in all fairness to the guys up there, we don't want to argue over, well, is your trailer half full, 3/4 full? So, our policy has been that if you have a 5-yard trailer, you pay for 5 yards, whether there's 1 yard in it or 5 yard. I mean, it's a 5-yard trailer, that's what you pay for. Again, we've got to look at the lifespan of the rubble site and put together a plan to, it's not going to last forever and ever. And we need to start planning probably for a shutdown of it and a reclamation. That's going to be a very, very expensive cost. And we're not so a landfill is Belfouche or Rapid City where you can literally, that's why our household garbage goes to Belfouche. We're a restricted use rubble site that's permitted by the state. We can only take certain things there. We're not allowed to take everything. Actually, all we can take is construction debris. So, again, trying to manage that is certainly a lot involved into it, and trying to keep employees and equipment, and again, running it like a business.
Thank you, Rick. Any questions before we move on to a different presenter?
Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to have a discussion on sponsorship, I think, as our next piece. That brings within it rallying events. We've had an events budget that was brought out of discussion from our some of our previous administrators. Historically, we've ran the rally and the events department with 3 budgets. The council needs to make a decision how many budgets and how they want to manage that. Our historical 3 budgets were, we used some monies that came through the bid budget to pay for events. We had rallying events budget and a sponsorship budget, but the rallying events budget and sponsorship budget by the ordinance were truly together at the end of the day, and what the auditors looked at. And the management of these things are up to the council. I don't know if you remember, obviously these most of you folks weren't there. Tony, I believe you were. We had a Jeff from Cadel Thorstensen, our auditor, come and make a small presentation to us. I think it was budget time last year. And his comment was, it's your budget. Make sure that it's where you need it, and we'll audit it from there. Obviously we have some constraints by what purchases and so on and so forth that need to be there, but our discussion is, in addition to the monies end of it, and in the case of sponsorship, but how the council, what they'd be comfortable with and be able to approve in a first and second reading for how we manage these items. So for tonight, we'd like to just kind of go over, I would just like to kind of go over some of the numbers that we have here and the different staff that we have plugged in these places and how that's going to work, because a previous PowerPoint by our former mayor had quite a few differences in this budget than what maybe this council wants to approve. So Lance, kind of starting with means of finance stuff, how comfortable are you with the numbers that we're potentially going to be looking at? Again, we haven't reconciled everything from 24 yet. We hope that we get that done before we go in. I guess I can add a little bit that is tied to some of these budgets. It sounds like we're going to have a site visit from our partners with the AFT, the American Flat Track. next week, and they'll be providing some insight of our Spirit of TT event. But I don't think they've exactly committed to the date yet on that. Can you?
The public forum will be on Tuesday. It hasn't been officially announced, but that's what the conversations were today. So, pardon? Tuesday on the 26th.
But
in the evening.
let's hold that for.
But yes,
That might be a little preliminary, but we do have to work on developing these budgets as we work through some of the dependencies. You know, that group had a couple of hurricanes in Florida that slowed down their process, but we're getting them back just before Thanksgiving, and we're thankful for that because it'll help us with our budget development. So Lance, on the, your expenses are pretty lineal as part of the sponsorship program. Generally, they're contractual, but the big piece is the revenue end. And so going into an anniversary year, are you confident that we're gonna have a big push? What's your crystal ball say?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, I think as everyone in this room knows, the anniversary years have historically been sponsorship revenue. I will agree with that. I do think the likelihood of increasing over 2024 in the prior several years is very good.
Okay. Part of this budget, as it's laid out here, shows, some combination, Tammy, with, because it's sponsorship and rally and events. In a message of optimizing rather than maximizing, how do we get control of and make sure that the spending that we're doing at the rally is more in line with things that are truly making a difference overall? Not saying that, I'm not trying to pick out on any one item, but I think there are potentially items that we could address, and maybe they don't cause enough of a ripple in the pond that we want to keep making the spend on them. I know tough decisions, tough discussion with you, but how do we come up with a budget that we can balance off of this and balance off of the cash end?
Well, we've talked about, you and I talked about modifying maybe some of our rides, maybe getting or cutting the music during the event at Rally Point, either reducing the number of bands or finding some other form of entertainment there. There's several ideas we've tossed around. I just need a budget so I can determine what I can do.
Well, it's going to be a little tough, especially during this year. So we're going to have to definitely understand some of these pieces, going into it. And again, this is a budget that would be one that I would hope that we would work for 6 months on, not 4 weeks or 6 weeks.
Yes.
There are some cause and effects on many of these things, especially in this budget. We talked to in some of the other departments earlier about, you cut a street project or an equipment replacement, it comes with a higher cost the next year. Some of these items could generate less revenue for us in different ways. We don't have as much entertainment at Rally Point, for example. We have less people that stop by there, and we've got a less desirable location for new sponsorship there.
There's less people that stay downtown and visit our businesses as well to create tax dollars for our city.
Exactly. So some of these pieces are tough. I think we have some some items that we talked about just today, of being able to potentially work through. Some of them are lingering from, quite a few people in this room can remember how the rally was in the early 2000s. It was so congested you couldn't go anywhere, you couldn't do anything, you couldn't really move around very well. But that's not the case anymore during the rally. We've enhanced transportation and whatnot, so some of our meals and whatnot that we're offering in different places. I mean, do you think there's some potential adjustment we can do there to see some savings out of that?
Well, for years I've discussed the employee meals, that maybe we could figure out another way of doing them that maybe would be a lesser cost. That's just up to the council to decide if they want to cut that basically $22,000 out of employee meals and the rent of the church that we have them at. I know other department heads feel that it's a must. For me, I can do whatever you guys want.
Well, there's differing requirements on there. I mean, not trying to single out one department over another, but we bring in, close to 70 temporary law enforcement officers. And that's part of their package. Some of the rest is, I think most people are able to eat lunch the same way they'll eat lunch tomorrow.
Right. And I think the chief has a plan, and that's kind of something that he does for meals for his officers.
Mm-hmm. So as we work through the next, and it's down to about a week and a half, we're going to have to, I think, further dive into some of the spends on this to make sure that we're in line with that, for me anyway, and hopefully the council concurs with a optimization rather than maximization. I mean, we can't do all things at any cost.
Yeah, there's several things that we can cut in, more things that if I had to, we could cut. I've already cut a lot out of this budget. Not just rally, but all of our other events as well. Some completely cut and gone.
Some events, correct. Well, also there's some popular events that we got to figure out as a council if we want to figure out, be able to fund some way. One would be rallying events. I think Tammy indicated that there was some level that we made adjustments there, but maybe there's ways that we can leverage that through our existing partnerships, value-added adjustments, if you will. Chamber of Commerce does lots of events for us. If there's a piece that we're able to work with the existing partners to help leverage some events, it seems very reasonable to me.
We've worked with them in the past to do lots of things, like the art festival and the fall festival. We always worked in conjunction with them. I help them and they help me, so.
One budget that has popped up here that was a new budget for this year, it doesn't even have a number, is a Rally Point budget.
Yep.
And Rally Point, and it looks like to me, though, it's kind of a mixed budget in that it has professional fees that factor into music licensing, which would be the licensing you have to pay to just have audio over the speaker system. But I'm not sure why band and booking fees would be in a Rally Point budget and not an events budget. And maybe that was an error on where we were before, but if we're truly trying to split off the cost of Rally Point, it would be maintenance, utilities, repairs, whatnot on the facility, but not items that are tied to some other item.
I believe that was probably a mistake, and it should have been half that amount to begin with. They have $4,000 in every one of these slices, and it's not $4,000 for every event.
Do you agree that that would be one, I mean, that would belong more in events than,
Correct. I
Then-
think that was just
okay, so that,
mistaken.
that's a piece that we're gonna definitely be able to address over the next handful of days.
It is redone in the events budget as well, where it's music on main, band, sound vendor, booking agent. A lot of things are
Redundancies?
maybe, perhaps.
All right, well,
And that ASCAP fee, we just started paying, so that's kind of a guesstimate on there.
right, and again, that might be more of a facility fee because that's tied to
Correct.
if we play Pandora over the audio system
To have any music there, we have to pay
because
those
it's
two
a
fees.
commercial venue.
ASCAP and BMI.
Well, I'd like to continue working to try and define and bring these forward. Again, Jim, you know, when you stepped out for a break there, I mentioned that the council gets to decide how they want this budget to work. Currently, we are at 3 budgets that we use for rallying events. In 2025, the initial proposal included essentially 2 budgets, but one was well, I guess it's still 3 budgets because it's Rally Point, events, and sponsorship. And it'd be council's prerogative to make those adjustments. Myself, I would wonder if it wouldn't be prudent that if we didn't have fees, moving the Rally Point budget into whoever's actually doing the maintenance end on that. I mean, I don't know if I don't think that's tied to our buildings group yet. Or Rick, if you're doing that. Part of parks. I mean, I understand the line items, you know, being able to address that, but it sure seems like the maintenance end of it is separate from what we have here that might be tied to more events.
The only thing that wouldn't be, Kevin, would be the music licensing.
The
That's
music-
something that I kind of have to control because if we have any bands that play there during Music on Main or the rally, there's forms that we have to fill out and how much they're paid and what the attendance is and stuff like that. That's the only thing that doesn't really pertain to the maintenance per se of the Rally Point.
Okay.
But that could go towards events for sure.
So do you see a way, and I mean, obviously my card would be played in the having one budget, but more line items for sponsorship and rallying events, and control it under one budget rather than having 2 budgets that come together underneath and don't include a clear picture.
Now you're just talking rally events again?
Rally events, city events, and sponsorship.
Okay,
I mean, I
'cause
believe that's how our structure was set up
I have another line,
maybe 6 years ago.
another
is that,
budget that
is
just
that right?
says events that was in the packet.
Right.
So now you want to move that? I'm sorry, I'm not tracking.
I guess, again, it comes to the council decision on what budget they're willing to support.
Right.
But it would be my idea that all of those were in one budget with separate line items for the different pieces.
Okay, in the past, and you guys, of course, do whatever you wish, but in the past, the Music on Main and all that stuff Camaro Rally came from the budget of the downtown bid to the taxation that's on the downtown business. That's why that was pulled different. Now, of course, whatever you want to do. I'm not arguing. I'm just historically, that's the way it was, and that's why I thought you created another budget called events that doesn't have a number either. I'm just trying to follow
Yeah.
where I'm gonna go.
Well, that's what we're trying to talk through a little bit. I mean, you
Yep.
brought up, again, the bid, Business Improvement District, budget line item. Of course, that comes from, assessments. And we
And that's where this,
And we make a direct payment to that group to run that. But we also had monies that maybe could be questioned. I mean, because it came from sales tax and it landed into that. It wasn't approved through the bid board, the expenditures. So it fell through this, who's managing those things. I mean, those expenditures were truly event expenditures. And in my mind, would be best being in a combined rally and events budget so that the means of finance tracks in a straight line and all of the expenditures fall under a single budget.
that would probably be easiest rather than me keeping my own track of where the duct tape goes for each event.
That's interesting, if the roll of duct tape for each event. Lance, haven't talked to you much. I mean, do you see a single budget being a possibility?
Certainly, I see the simplicity. I know it would probably make Tammy's life a lot easier. For me, it probably wouldn't make as much difference, but certainly considering the different budgets she has and being able to combine those would make sense, in my opinion.
Thank you. Council, do you think that we should be spending the next week, spending some time to try and make that one budget? Maybe try to find a line item for the rally and events, or excuse me, the rally point expenditures, so that it fits into an existing budget line item.
In my mind, that should go with facilities somewhere, parks maybe, or I don't know. I mean, it is a facility.
To my way of thinking, we haven't had a rally committee during my tenure. I know there was one before that, but there's not ever been, since May, a rally committee. That might be a place to start working some of this out, because we've been doing it at this meeting particularly, but I would think that that's a good spot for that to be held.
Jim, I agree wholeheartedly with you. Are you gonna get it worked out by next Wednesday?
I'm not sure that's possible, but it's, I would say, I've heard what Tam said. I mean, it really comes down to, we need to know what we're gonna do and then start working toward that. You know, we've got two department heads essentially. Are we thinking of making that one? And I think that needs to be discussed, certainly, but it's an event, and even though we call it rally and events, and there is a Camaro rally, and there's Christmas, and there's music on Main, and essentially, this is a motorcycle city, and so much of what we need to be doing, focusing on, is what happens in that week of August, and leading up to it, and what that involves. How are we going to maximize the event in Sturgis? You know, Lance, that's your responsibility. How do we find those sponsors? How do we make sure that the maximum that we can provide to the citizens and to the attendees and to the people that expect to make money from this rally? You get the vendors in here. I think that's a big step.
Jim, I agree with what you said. I've had for a number of years myself a little bit of a problem with the term maximize versus optimize. And I mean, it could be just semantics that we're talking about, but you know, maximize in my mind is all things at any cost. And you know, any cost might not necessarily be monetary cost, but there's probably sponsors that maybe don't fit our community. So maximization might not necessarily be, I mean, we're not going to have some XXX rated movie company be one of our title sponsors, I would hope. And
Here, here.
but optimizing it, I think, is a piece that we certainly need to work on. One of our benefits for the rally, I mean, I think everybody's probably noticed the Rosenau fire truck that we have in our fleet of fire protection. You know, hopefully we can work forward as we continue to develop this sponsorship year in and year out. You know, it'd be pretty nice if we had a ambulance sponsor or a pickup truck sponsor, or, you know, of course, it's easy to talk about those things, but it's not always easy to get one of those companies to sign the contract, right? But to me, that's more the optimization end is, you know, we're gaining financially as a community off of it, but we're also gaining on a separate level. Does that seem reasonable, Lance?
Understood. I agree.
So with this, and in the sake of time, not that we want to rush this, I mean, we're here to have the discussion, but is there a brief consensus, I'm not asking for a vote, that we manage this as one budget with more line items in it?
I'd be interested in that, and I know that there's also been some conversation in legal and finance also about sponsors who would be interested in giving one big check instead of us approaching them multiple times throughout the year. And so I think that having this under one budget as well would benefit that.
Yeah, so you're talking about a sponsor
one big
that
check.
might be rally related and might be
Also
some
want to support other events
some
in the
other
community
event.
in general.
Is that reasonable, Lance?
That's consistent with the partnerships we've had in the past. Yes,
We already have some of those, like, right, Lance?
we
That-
do.
Yeah.
We do.
Is that the legal and finance meeting?
I mentioned next Wednesday. Counselor Thompson asked me about next Wednesday. Well, that's the day that we compile the final budget that will be presented as a first reading on December 2nd, because we have the 2 days of Thanksgiving holiday. The budget has to be on the agenda on Black Friday. And so next Wednesday is the drop dead date for compiling the budget and hopefully not using the red pen too heavily. So I assume you're trying to consider how you can hold a rally and events meeting. Is there any other questions, or do we have any other inputs, or anybody from the public that might have? We got several candidates for, you know, some of our open positions. Is there comment? I mean, the rally budget is it's a big piece of our community, and it's been at times contentious. I don't know how else to say it. Can you please come up to the microphone?
I just had one comment about the original rally logo and benefits and how that all came about. It was during the mid-'80s, and Tom Monahan brought it in to the existing Black Hills Motor Classic Corporation. They had a board. They were the sponsor of the rally, the corporation was. So he brought it in, made a proposal to them that he had drawn that up. He's got their name on it, and that he would give X amount of dollars royalties back to the Motor Classic, and that he was hoping that there would be local businesses that would want to use the logo on 6 different items, or however many the group wanted. Well, that sounded good to everybody there. So there was some discussion, on a side note, John Hughes is the attorney there, he was on the board. Long discussion about the word Sturgis applying to other names in concurrence with the rally. And he said, well, you got a logo with this one, that's the only one you're ever going to be able to protect. You're going to spend a lot of money if you're going to try to protect the rest of it. It's been out there for 40 years, and that was $10 million earlier. So, whatever. But the point this other lady, I forget her name, was making, that the Tom Monahan's intent was to have this money donated back to the Motor Classic Board, and then they help promote these special projects or items. Well, that all went fine, and I was the manager of the chamber then, so I was there. Several chamber board members were also members of the Motor Classic, so they went all good. The last item was the Motor Classic Board voted to dissolve the corporation. So all that got thrown over to the chamber, and the rest is water under the bridge. But that's how, in reference to this other lady's explanation, how that started, what was the intent. But I think you're on the right track. Going back, that's water under the bridge. But going back to this concept that to try to, minimize the number of employees you got, because it's obvious by looking at your budget and the cost of employee expenses that adding employees along the way is unsustainable. Somehow you're going to have to condense it. I mean, we didn't have a rally and events department when I was there, and that's all, the way it is. But the amount of employee costs it is for every person you hire, you might as well multiply it times 1.5, because that's how much it costs. If you look at any of your departments, it's unsustainable to have so many departments and so many employees under each one. I think part of that needs to be divided out into the community that's already, other parts of the community that's already doing events for the community. And that's just my observation, but I just want to throw in that point of history more than anything. Plus, I think you're on the right track to trying to consolidate things under one department.
Thank you. Would you state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm
here?
sorry. My name is Jim Quinn, and I was the chamber director here during the mid-'80s. So that's when that thing with the logo, Tom drew it, put the Black Hills Motor Classic on it. There was a legal corporation at that time that he was using their name. So that was his proposal, and they accepted that. And he was just going to put the money over to them, and then they dissolved. They didn't want to meet anymore, so they dissolved the corporation.
There's been lots of renditions of all that through history. Thank you, Jim.
That was $10 or $15 million later. Now we're at where we're at. That's about what the city has spent in the meantime.
Bonnie, you got a comment? Can you come up to, or if you got a question, I'll repeat it, and you don't have to make it up.
Eventually. I don't want to prolong this, and I've really tried to focus and just stay on the budget issue, but the question comes up about that rally and that committee. What happened to that committee? Where did that go? I mean, I thought that was one of our standing committees that sort of processed things and brought perspectives together. What can you tell me about that committee? Do you know where I'm going?
I understand your question. You asked why we hadn't had any meetings of that committee through this calendar year yet. And
it just kind of disappeared.
That piece can only go back to in our rearview mirror with previous management and administration. So I can't answer why we didn't have any rallying events. I wasn't on that committee as a counselor, and I think most of the guys and people that were on that have not had it. I mean, there hasn't been a meeting. Tammy, I don't think you've had a. Yeah.
The previous administration ended that committee in May, I believe, Lance? So that is why we have not had a committee meeting, because that committee was disbanded, for lack of a better word, in May.
Right.
Well, I
Was its
remember.
function useful to you in your work and what you do? Would it have been if it had been?
Well, nothing like throwing me on the spot. Some of it was very useful. Some of it was in the past. I'll throw it out there. The first year I was here, when I could have used the guidance, there was 2 meetings. The next year, when I felt more comfortable, there was probably 25 meetings. Some of it was helpful, some of it maybe not as much, but at least they were engaged.
Let me change my verb. Could that group be useful to you if it?
Absolutely.
Then why don't we go back there? Why don't we engage those people who have perspective and?
We did put it back into play, Bonnie. It's just right now, we have to have a budget in only
Oh,
another few days,
right.
and we didn't get there. I will point out as well, though, that none of our committees are management committees, they're advisory committees.
Right.
So they don't make decisions for the council, I mean, on
Oh.
agenda items.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking as Tammy's trying to process this and trying to look at consolidating budgets, are there people out there with perspectives that could help accelerate that process? And I mean, does Tammy have the authority to call on individuals to say, would you sit down with me and knead this bread?
I believe she does. Thank you. Is there any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, Council, Dave Murtha, yep, I would like to tell you, I think you're right on track. As a candidate for Ward 3, I agree with what you're proposing. And I hope that the council can agree with it, because most people operate under one budget. You're on the right path, and it's going to take a little time, but I support you 100%. This is what needs to happen. And the other thing I want to tell you, when you're talking about having a sponsor for somebody, when we elect a qualified mayor in January, and we have somebody representing this great city, they can show us off, and maybe we'll get one of those for the ambulance and so on. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. All right, is there any other comments? With that, I think we've gotten through our budget discussion for the night. We do have a need for executive session. We do expect there to be action afterwards. Our executive session is going to be held outside of this room so that we can return to this room. And what we have is an update on 2 legal items, 1 contractual item, and 1 personnel item.
Do you want a motion to go into exec?
I'll second.
Those in favor of going into exec indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Those opposed? Thank you. We'll take a couple-minute break and convene to our spot in the library.
it'll be ice.
Stop. Hopefully we get like 14 inches of snow.
Quiet.
On the hill, we need it. We got a brand new snow blower sitting there. It's been doing its job. I haven't had to move snow since we bought it.
I was gonna say, if I bought a snow blower and it stayed unused for the rest of the time,
You'd
I'd
be okay with that.
That's what we're hoping for. Yeah, you can back drag with it and it blows. Yeah, you can go up to the wall and you go up to it and you back drag and it snow blows. Muskox.
Minute or so for it to start.
No problem.
buy that anywhere, do you?
No, there's actually,
Three of us there. It's the maximum, I mean, too many is the problem,
The max is 3.
I know, so.
If you wanted.
We have to do it quickly, nobody else is available.
I see that.
Probably, depending on what it is.
Thank you.
I didn't hear that.
I said I could likely be available.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, well, yeah, that was another question.
Is that us?
Seconds away, seconds. What are you wearing that Texas shirt for?
Apparently we won. It's a good day. All right, we're live.
I think so.
Outstanding. We are back from executive session and motion to go into regular session.
No motion.
Kind of a long day. Anyway, the item that's left on our agenda for the night is,
Second that, or do you need someone to second that?
well, we probably should.
Second. And then should we all vote?
Those in favor of coming out of executive session?
Yes.
Yes.
Session. Item 13.2 is consideration of the collective bargaining agreement with General Drivers and Helpers Union, Local 120, affiliated with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters and the City of Sturgis Police Department and the City of Sturgis employees. Based on the review of the items presented, is there any discussion or is there any motions on this collective bargaining agreement?
I would make a motion to reject and present a counter agreement.
I'll second.
All right, we've got a first by Ruth to reject and present a counter offer on the collective bargaining agreement, and a second by Jim. Is there any additional discussion on this motion? All right, we'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. That motion carried unanimously. That's the last item on our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
First by Tony and a second by Jim. Those in favor say no, yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And those opposed, no. We are adjourned. Thank you.